Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Trash talking at the Super Bowl is a tale as old as time. There are times where it works out incredibly well, and where the person talking the trash backs it up. Case in point, Super Bowl XXIX, when Lloyd Mumford basically said that Washington quarterback Billy Kilmer had no ball velocity whatsoever, and that going up against him would be easy. Kilmer proceeded to throw no touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 19.6 passer rating, as Washington's offense had one of the most anemic performances in Super Bowl history. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And then there are times where it doesn't work out, like when Hollywood Henderson said that Terry Bradshaw couldn't spell cat if you spotted him the C and the A. And then Bradshaw proceeded to win the MVP of Super Bowl XIII and lead the Steelers to a victory over the Cowboys, where the offense was firing on all cylinders. And then there are times where it really doesn't work out. What happened at Super Bowl XXIX has to be, without a doubt, the stupidest bit of trash talking in Super Bowl history. I've covered some bad ones on this channel over the past year, but in terms of NFL history, this one might even take the cake. This is the story of the worst trash talk in Super Bowl history. Before I talk about what was actually said, we need a bit of context going into this game. Super Bowl XXIX was a mismatch of epic proportions on paper. In fact, the game was such a mismatch that the 49ers were favored by 18.5 points. It's the largest spread in the history of the Super Bowl, and at least since the merger, nothing comes remotely close. To put into perspective just how big of a spread this was, remember when the Saints played the Broncos this season, and the Broncos were literally playing the game without a quarterback? The Saints were favored by 17. The 49ers were favored by more points against the AFC champion in a Super Bowl than one of the best teams in the NFL playing a team without a quarterback. And there are many reasons why the spread was so high. I'd be here all day if I listed every single reason, but here's just a few. The 49ers had been to the Super Bowl many times before and had experience, while the Chargers had never made it to the big game before. In 1994, 49ers quarterback Steve Young was named the MVP of the league, and led the league by completing 70.3% of his passes and throwing for 35 touchdowns. For the record, that completion percentage was the second best in NFL history at the time. The Chargers' pass defense, on the other hand, they weren't good. They ranked 22nd in the league in yards allowed out of 28 teams. The Niners dominated the postseason and cruised their way to the Super Bowl, winning by 29 points against the Bears in the divisional round before jumping out to a quick 21-0 lead against the Cowboys in the NFC Championship. They won that one by double digits. The Chargers, meanwhile, used up all their luck in their first 2 playoff games, having to come from behind by double digits in the second half both times to squeak out incredibly lucky fourth quarter victories. Side note, I have no idea why people forgot about that divisional round game against the Dolphins, because that might be the most underrated playoff game in NFL history. But perhaps the biggest reason why the Chargers were heavy underdogs entering the Super Bowl was the fact that the teams met earlier in the season, and even though the game was at Jack Murphy Stadium, it was an absolute rout. The Niners won it 38-15, and led 21-0 at one point in the second quarter. Nobody was giving the Chargers a chance to win this one. I know people were sick and tired of seeing the Bills represent the AFC at this point, but at least in 2 of their Super Bowls, they made you believe that they had a legitimate shot at winning. All hope of the Chargers winning was seemingly non-existent before this game even began. So the last thing you want to do if you're the Chargers is give the Niners any bulletin board material that they do not need. Someone didn't get the memo. Perhaps the best player on the 49ers is Jerry Rice. He would still play for another decade after this, but even as early as 1994, there were talks about him being the greatest receiver of all time. He led the league in receiving 5 times, led the league in receiving touchdowns 6 times, had made it to 9 straight Pro Bowls, and had been named the first team All-Pro 7 times at that point. Once again, during that 1994 season, he was the best receiver in football, posting 112 receptions for 1,499 yards and 13 touchdowns. When you're asked how you're going to defend Jerry Rice, what's the best answer to say? You could say that he's a great receiver, and we're going to try to do everything in our power to prevent Steve Young from looking his way. You could say that it's going to be a challenge, but that's why they're in the Super Bowl and that's why they're one of the best offenses in football. Or you could do what Stanley Richard did, and basically say he's not going to make any impact on the game whatsoever. Richard said, completely unprompted, "We're going to take Jerry Rice out of the game. We'll make Steve Young throw to other receivers. On its own, that statement is already pretty laughable. With some added context, it's somehow worse. You see, when the teams met earlier in the season, Rice was targeted 12 times. He caught 12 passes and picked up 144 yards on those passes. The last time these teams played a month ago, Rice caught literally 100% of the passes thrown his way. The man who said these comments wasn't an all-pro cornerback or a really good player. It was Stanley Richard, who was not good at all. In fact, he had been publicly criticized multiple times by head coach Bobby Ross for blowing coverages. As I mentioned earlier, the Chargers already had one of the worst pass defenses in football. The previous week in the AFC Championship against Pittsburgh, they allowed Neil O'Donnell, a guy who had not crossed the 300-yard barrier all season, and was Neil O'Donnell, to throw for 349 yards. And yet Richard is out here proclaiming that he's going to take Rice out of the game, despite all available evidence contradicting that. As you can probably guess, things did not end well. In fact, one might even say that Jerry Rice took it personally. January 29th, 1995. We're finally here. Super Bowl XXIX. Stanley Richard against Jerry Rice. How did this matchup go? Do I even have to go any further? It's Stanley Richard against Jerry freaking Rice. How do you think it went? Who do you think won that battle? To the surprise of literally no one, it was Jerry Rice. On literally the third play of the game, Rice ran right by Richard and scored on a 44-yard touchdown. Remember when Richard said they weren't going to let him run free and run inside? So much for that game plan. On the touchdown, the commentary booth at ABC had such lines as, "It looked like the Chargers were looking for an autograph as Rice ran by, and I have no idea what they're doing." The coverage was that bad, and it got worse. On the second drive, Richard forgot how to tackle and allowed Ricky Watters to ease his way into the end zone for a touchdown. Not even 5 minutes into this game and it was already over. And in the third quarter, with the 49ers holding on to a 25-point lead, Young found Rice again on a touchdown over the middle, where Richard got beat and missed a tackle. When the game ended, not only did the 49ers clobber the Chargers 49-26, in a game that wasn't even that close, but Jerry Rice finished with 10 receptions for 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. If it wasn't for Steve Young having arguably the greatest game by any quarterback in Super Bowl history, Rice would have won the MVP. And even without the MVP, I'll go as far as saying that this was the greatest performance by any receiver in Super Bowl history. It's either that, or it's another Jerry Rice game where he torched the Bengals for 215 yards and a touchdown at Super Bowl XXIII. After the game, at least Richard was gracious in defeat and ate crow, saying everything they do well. It sounds so simple, but it's almost impossible to stop. But this game was so bad for Richard that the Chargers didn't bring him back in 1995. They just let him walk in free agency to Washington. At the introductory press conference he had when he signed there, Richard showed a sense of humor, saying about his performance, "That was not my best game. And when I go to dinner, I try not to order rice. Rice has left a bad taste in my mouth." At least Richard took it in stride. I guess it doesn't apply now since Rice hasn't played in the NFL since 2004, but let this serve as a lesson to all. If you're going to trash talk, make sure that you back it up, especially at the Super Bowl. And if you're going to trash talk, you better make sure you don't come after Jerry Rice, because it's not gonna end well. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaroGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.